Okay, everyone. So let's just work on. Let's have GS expressions, operators, and operands. So we want to learn in today's session what are some of the examples of a statement and expression in JavaScript. We also want to cover different operators used in JavaScript and identify the difference between an operator and operand. Last time we did some type coercion discussion. So perhaps we can try to work on, we had some examples for explicit and implicit type of coercion. So now let's try to create here an example for expressions. So let's just create a new folder. Let's have a 04 expression and operators. So this is more of a syntax, JavaScript syntax related to what we call JS syntax. And we have what we call fixed values that are called literals and variables that are called variables, right? So let's first try to, I think it's better if we call this JavaScript syntax. JS syntax, JavaScript syntax, expressions, and operators. Let's have a JS syntax, or I think let's call it expression .js. If I can type correctly. So so something to take note of, JavaScript syntax will be defining two types of values. So JS syntax will try to define two types of values. We have what we call the number one, fixed values, and number two will be the variable values. So fixed values are called literals, and variable values are called variables. And for the fixed values, we have the two most important literals, and that will be numbers and strings. And usually when we have numbers, that can be full numbers or with floats, or written with or without decimals. And when it comes to strings, it can be written using single quotes or double quotes. Okay, so let's say rod. So those are some of the things that you will be encountering if you will be working with fixed values. And when we talk about variables, these are usually used for storing values, as what we have discussed in our second session here. And some things to take note of when you're writing a programming language, we can compare with various types of speech. So if we are going to be communicating with the computer, it's like you're communicating in English. You will be using different parts of speech, and that's why we need to understand what will be a statement in JavaScript, similar in English. And statements in JavaScript will be executed sequentially. Okay, so that means each line of code that we write will be read by the compiler as in a sequence, and a statement is composed of one or more expressions, and an expression is made up of operators and operands. So this is very important to understand, and I think this is going to be helping you out in trying to understand a code based. Personally, I'm still learning also, and being able to understand statements and expressions in JavaScript really helped me out in at least be able to understand what's happening. And when we are trying to read a code base, it makes it a lot easier to familiarize yourself if you are seeing some sort of a guide or a rule that you have found in some documentation out there that will be telling you what this is and what that is, right? So let's try to look into some of these examples. Just we did look up some examples already in the past, so we can just try to work on checking out some more here. So let's try to let's have do some. So an example here, if we try to, let's say, have a so if we try to talk about operators, let's have some operators. These are like keywords that we will be using for us to be able to maximize the use of computing values, or for us to be able to compute certain values, like we can say that we have what we call arithmetic operators. So JavaScript operators will be using arithmetic operators like plus sign, minus, we have multiply, we also have division. So these are some examples of operators, arithmetic operators. So for the statements at the atomic level of our JavaScript statements, we are thinking about operators and operands. That's just something to take note of. So as I mentioned, we do have here the operators, and JavaScript will be using arithmetic operators here. And so far we have covered some of those arithmetic operators like the plus sign already, which is this is also known as the assignment operator, or sorry, this is the plus sign, which is also considered to be as the string concatenation operator. String concatenation operator, and we also use this for adding values, right? Or when we are adding values, the plus sign. So depending on how you will be using this as in context, let's say we have again, we've done this before, so let's just do some variable declaration. And as I mentioned, it's important that you have and you're doing a declaration. We can do this, but it's not good that we only have, let's say we have an A here and then we have a semicolon. This is really bad because in a sense, we're not really telling the compiler what is letter A, right? We're not telling it anything. So if we try to console.log this A, what will happen? So let's just have an example here, and why is our 04 here and node expression.js. So you would see A is not defined. So this is bad. This is really bad because we're not telling anything, right? So when we talk about expressions, we should be combining some of the operands and operators for us to be able to at least demonstrate or deliver a complete thought, as we may call it. So this is bad. Let's just have that in mind. You'll see it's returning. This is A is not defined, right? So that just tell the runtime environment from where we are running our JavaScript code right now in Node. It's telling us that it's not defined. The variable that we have, the variable that we have here, which is the letter A character. Okay. So just take note, operators like keywords, and let's have another one, and we have what we call the assignment operator, and we did tackle that before, and that's the equal sign here. This is equal, let's just bring this down, and we have the equal sign, and this is considered to be as the assignment operator, right? And we can also say that we will be initializing using the equal sign. We usually initialize a variable using the equal sign value or operator. So there's also what we call operands. Okay, just operators and operands. These are just some examples of operators. Equal sign assignment operator, or variable initialize. It helps us initialize a variable. Let's let A assign the value or initialize with the value of 5. So usually that's what we do, right? So if we have our example here, just bring that up here. We should have let's go back up here. And we get that 5, and we were able to solve that a is not defined, right? Let's just copy this and just bring back that example just as a note. I'm using control key plus the / for me to be able to automatically comment this out. You can also use, if you wanted to, control K. You would see at the bottom, K was pressed, waiting for second key of chord, and C. If I drew a combination of control K plus C, that will also be doing the same thing. It will be allowing me to comment out a line of code, and it will use a single line comment. Okay. Now let's talk about a little bit about operands. So when we talk about operands, unlike keywords and operators in JavaScript, which are definitely going to be fixed and part of the language, like the following here, we have equal sign, the plus sign. It's part of the language. Operands, on the other hand, we as the programmer can try to go and give operands their name. And we can combine operators and operands together for us to be able to create an expression that will be used to compose a statement. So it's really pretty easy for you to identify an expression. It's a combination of values, variables, and operators. So that means, let's just have that a note here. Expressions. Operands are, or we as the programmer can give operands their name. Okay, so just have that in mind. And then when we talk about expressions, we are able to create expressions that are going to be a combination of values, variables, and operators. So these are a combination of values, variables, and operators. Okay, so my dogs are outside and playing around, and sorry for that. I had to let them in, or else they'll be making some noises. So now, if we try to compare this with the English language, if we would want to compose or write a proper sentence, let's say for example, the cat, right? And we end it, or the cat. We end the, in English, the cat. If we were explaining that to a friend, we will need to get some more information, right? Because it's not really a complete sentence. The information in that sentence is not really clear. So what is that cat? We know that the cat is a noun, right? However, we were not able to use some verbs, adjectives to describe the cat or something like that. That will be giving us more details about what the cat can be doing, or what is it doing. How would you be describing the cat? Like is it cute, or is it small, is it big, or something like that. And that's almost the same with JavaScript. We cannot be just saying, again, a and this, because the compiler will just be saying, again, it is not defined. It tells us that the whatever we did here is not defined, and it doesn't make sense to the compiler. Okay, so for an expression, we will need to declare a variable, and again, we do have let's go back to our examples here. So this is our variable declaration, and that will be let a is assigned the value, and again, this is variable declaration, let a, and we have our variable initialization, or assigning a value, right? You want to assign a value to that variable, so let a assign the value of 4, or actually we assign a value of 4. And if we try to run this should not be running into an error, so we get that 4 on our console once we try to invoke or access the log method that we have here. And we're performing we can also try to evaluate a value. Okay, so expressions is also relating to evaluating a value. So usually when we try to compute and evaluate a value, for example, let's say 10 plus 20 evaluates to 30, right? So let's try to first initialize. Let have b assign the value of 10. Let c assign the value of 20. So if we try to break this down, let e is assigned the value of b plus c. So we can find expressions in here. We can try to break this down, and we can try to evaluate, or let's try to identify what are the different expressions that are combined in our example here. So in here, we have let e assign the value of b plus c. We can see that there are 3 expressions here. So let's say first, let e is what we call variable declaration, right? We declared a variable. And we have second, we perform an evaluation. So we have that, let's just say, I think I'll just go with the b plus c is adding two values. So that means we are combining, we're doing an addition, or we're adding two values together. So that's an expression. And another one here will be third, will be assigning a value. So that means that would be the part from where we assign the result of B plus C to A variable E, sorry. That's here. So we have three expressions in this single line statement. Okay. So when we're trying to evaluate, or let's try to understand some code base, it's pretty good to at least have an idea. So this is a JavaScript expression that's you adding or performing an evaluation. This is a JavaScript expression that will be you assigning a value to a variable, and you declaring a variable is also an expression if we try to break it down. Okay, so that's an example of an expression. Those are some examples of an expression. And let's try to cover some of the operators. Let's try to cover some of the operators. Or let's see. Let's just commit this. Get all examples of expression in JavaScript. Let's also create a different file here, and let's call this operators.js. Just create a new terminal here. Let me just rename this to git. This I won't need to move. Update 03 type of coercion. At least we won't have that getting highlighted. Let's go back here. So now let's try to talk about operators. So we do have several categories of operators. And we've covered some of them already. So we have one, which is the assignment operator. We have two. We have the arithmetic operators. That's the plus, multiply, divide, and subtract, right? We also have what we call the increment and decrement. Let's try to work on that. So let's say we have a variable I. And we assign that with a value of 1. Or let's say increment. So we have what we call the increment decrement. Increment decrement operators. And that will be double plus sign and double minus signs. And if we say var A, or var increment, and we wanted to increment that by 1 here, let's try to run this in the terminal and operators. Sorry, that should be node operators.js. That's because we didn't console.log that variable. Let's try to increment that. And we're getting 2 because we incremented it by 1. Okay. What if we try to increment the value here? What will happen? Let's see. We're still getting 2. And if we try to... We're still getting 2 here. So we're printing it twice. We're printing the first value, we're incrementing it. And then when we try to increment it inside of the console.log, we should be getting, we're thinking we should be getting the 3 value, right? So I think that's because of our first console.log here works after the value has been utilized already. So what if we try to increment it one more time? Let's see what will happen. Will that still be... So let's save this. So that's the only time that we got a value of 3. So I think that's something that we should be careful of sometimes. I think what's happening here is we are getting the increment here. We're printing console.log. And in here, we're also printing console.log, the value of the current increment here. And the only time that we get to increment it one more time. So there's a little bit of exploration here. But a better way to approach this is to before the variable increment, we want to first evaluate the increment of the variable increment here and then print it out to the console. So let's try to clear this out. Let's see what will happen if we try to do that way. So that's what's happening right now. So you would see we are able to print out 3 because we have the initialized value of 1. We incremented it 1. And then we wanted to evaluate the increment and then print it out on the console. Unlike when we tried to do this, or when we tried to do this, right, this example that we have here, just to really explore some things here. We have the value, current value of the variable 1. Then it got incremented when we tried to run the first console.log here. So we get the increment plus, or we get the value of 2. And we still get the value of 2 once we try to console.log it with the plus increment operator. And we only get the 3 because that's the time that we now have this as a it has the value of 2 already. And again, take note of the sequential events that are happening, right? So we're getting a 3 now because we're trying to log it one more time. And it already has that value of 2 stored in that variable. So I think that's just something to explore on. So this will work similar with decrement. We just replaced the what if we do decrement by 1 here? Console.log decrement, what will be printed out on our console? Let's see. We get a value of 0. And if we get to do the console.log, I think we'll still be getting a value of 0. And if we wanted that to be printed out with a new value, which is, this should be -1. So we get that values, or those values. Or decrement, or sorry, let's console.log this and do the same exact syntax. Or we start with the decrement. And let's see what will happen here. We get that -1. Okay. So now let's go and try to have another arithmetic operator, and that is the modulus. Let's have the, we do have here number 4, modulus operator, and that's the percentage sign here. Just one thing to take note of, just to really be able to differentiate operators from operands. So if we try to, let me just put that on top of here. Note. So we have the operand, operator, and operand. Let's have this as a comment just to demonstrate here. So if we have 10 and plus sign here and another 10 here, so this is an operand and this is another operand. Okay, and this is our operator, just to differentiate an operator from an operand. So the numbers or the values that we have in our arithmetic operation here, so the numbers here that we are trying to add all together, or we want to produce an output and return the value or evaluate its output, will be operands. We call them operands. And in our modulus operator here, we want to return the division remainder. Okay, so that means if we try to have an example here for let's comment this out. Let's clear our console here. And let's go back here for our modulus. Let's assign the value of what examples do we already have here. So let's have A and modulus P. Of course, we want to declare X or A, assign the value of 10, or let's say 5. Let B 2. So what will this be? Console.log modulus so we get the remainder of 1. We can also write it this way if we have let's C, or let's say M, assign the value of C modulus of D. We can directly do it this way. Or let's just say, rather than C and D, let's have 10 modulus of 3. And then console.log .m. See what that will be doing for us. We also get 1 as the remainder. We know that if we try to calculate calculator, think we'll get 1 as the remainder for 10 if we divide it by 3, right? I think that's not the modulus operator here is giving us the remainder 1. That's why we're getting that 1 and 1. So that's what the leftover is if we try to divide this by 3. 3 plus 3 plus 3 is equals to 9. Then we have the remainder of 1. So some things to also be aware of will be what we call the string operators. So let's have string operators. We also have what we call the exponentiation that will be raising the first operand to the power of the second operand. Let's have exponentiation also. So let C is assigned the value of 5. Let D is assigned the value of C. And we can use this to asterisk here. And console.log. What are we going to get here? That did, or sorry, that's not C. That should be D. And we get 25. A, B, C, D, E. Let's have what will happen if we try to, will this work? I think we need to console.log just to explore some. Not a number, so we're not getting a number. I think we need to let's just have F and G here. Let's see what will happen if we do this. We also get 25. So we'll need to set, it's the same technique, just a little bit of a shorthand if we're going to be using the math.pow method, which is a built-in function inside of JavaScript. So that worked. So we're just passing in two arguments or values, which is F assign the value of 5, G assign the value of 2, and that's the same syntax as to what we're seeing here right now. Now, when we talk about string operators, so we did see this before. So let's have string 1, hello. Let string 2, world. And let message send the value of string 1 plus string 2. What will we be getting if we try to console.log message? We get that hello world, right? Hello world. We're concatenating. And we also need to be aware of the term precedence. So this will be describing in which operators are performed in an arithmetic expression. Okay, so that's just, so if we try to have an example here, let's say we have a let b, or let's say let h are precedence. So just to be very detailed about it, let's have 1 plus 2 plus 3. So if you have some background in algebra, we usually use the order of operations where things are usually done by using the PEMDAS syntax here. So if you try to console.log precedence here, what will be the value of our 1 plus 2 plus 3? So we get 6. 1 plus 2, 3 plus 3 is 6. Sorry, let's have this first. We get 7. In this case, multiplication, if we followed parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction, right? So what if we try to use PEMDAS in this case? Let's use PEMDAS. for us to be able to control whatever output. 1 plus 2, and let's multiply by 3. Let's console.log PEMDAST here, for example. Let's see what we'll be getting. We get 9. 1 plus 2 is 3, multiplied by 3 is 9. So that means parenthesis has precedence over multiplication as according to PEMDAS. So we have another operator that we would want. We do have the string operators, which will be single quotes or double quotes. We also have what we call the function invocation operators, or this is, you would see we do have this as a function, and that's why I'm referring to this log as a method, which is just simply a function that has been created by, if we go to node, you'll see if I console, you'll see that we have an object, and that log is a function. Right? You're seeing that it's a function. It's telling us, if we go to the node environment shell here, we're able to see that this is a function, and we're accessing it from an object. You'll see the console is actually an object. So we'll talk more about that as we move forward with our discussions here. And you can exit that by Control C, then Control C again, for it to be able to exit that shell there, or terminal. Let's talk about function invocation operators. I think, just check here. So mic test. Mic test. Hello. Hello, mic test. I think my mic got disconnected, sorry. So usually, when we say function invocation operators, a good example will be that console.log. And we can usually pass in arguments inside of that once we try to create a function. So this is a function code block just to demonstrate. We want to invoke that. We'll cover functions as we move forward, but just for now, rather than console.log, we want to say, hello, I'm Rod. And I'm going to use this function here for me to invoke it. So rather than using console.log here, I'm going to use this function declaration that I have, and for me to be able to invoke it, let's try to see if this will work. We need to sometimes do some testings, right? And you will see there's that hello, I'm Rod, and I'm not using the console.log anymore. I'm invoking it using the function invocation operators. And you can also sometimes use this with parentheses. Usually we separate arguments for us to be able to, inside of the parentheses, we can put in strings. We can put some arguments depending on whatever code you've written inside of a function. We also have what we call logical operators. And let's try to take note of that up here. Logical operators, which will be logical and, which are this 2 ampersand, and logical or, which will be the pipe symbol. Just if you press on the shift key, but I think the better way to on the on-screen keyboard rather than, you'll see that's where the pipe symbol is. So we have that backslash and then shift, and that will be the pipe symbol. Okay. If we wanted to add or let's say have add two things together or evaluate two things together, we can use the logical and or operators. I think better to have an example for that. But perhaps we can have that in another different discussion session. We also have what we call the property accessory or property accessory operator or member accessory operator. Sometimes you can access methods and properties using this operator. So that means we can call this member accessory operator. That will be the dot symbol. Okay. We're using the period. So again, that as a good example, we have that console and we have a number of properties and methods that we can try to access, or perhaps a better way to also show you here, we're able to access different methods inside of the document object model using this. Let's say for example we wanted to get an element by ID. Test, right? So if we wanted to get element by ID and we assign that to var test, and then we wanted to, of course we'll need to create an index.html here if we wanted to demonstrate it and reference that by using an ID. So let's say I would want to have an index.html file here. So a paragraph with an ID of test. We are in a directory, so we would want to have that operator.js file. Let's see if this will work and test it out. If we try to run this on the browser, can we get that console.log test? We do get that console.log. You would see we do have in our console that paragraph with an ID test. Or we can just try to replace this with that inner dot. Let's have that inner HTML assign the value of test. Literal string. Let's see what that will be doing. We get to display something on the browser. Okay, so that's what that operator is used for most of the time. The property accessory operator or member accessory operator. We also have what we call the array element access operator. This is especially useful if this is a square bracket. Of course, this is going to be very useful when we're doing some destructuring already in the future. Array element and we also have what we call array element just to give you an idea here, but we'll talk more about this in a separate lecture. Should be able to console.log this. And that's not working. Why is that? I think we'll need to console.log that out. We get that rod1 test in the array. And we also have what we call the code block operator. I believe we've already demonstrated that, and that's the code block that we have here. We should have. So I hope that this gave you some ideas, and as I mentioned, I just want to end this lecture with, again, know that they exist, understand. This is my personal acronym when it comes to, I call this KURA, right? Know that they exist first, understand how they work, and then remember and retain how to use, remember, and of course apply as you write your programs, right? That's where KURA comes in. Understand how they work and what their function is. So the point of our exercise for today will just be to introduce to you some of these different operators. Code block operator, and that will be, at least once you try to look into some of the code base that you'll be reading, it's like you're reading English and you're familiarized with the alphabet characters, and then of course the syntax, when to use a period, when to use a semicolon, when to use a comma, right? So far we did almost cover most parts of the on-screen keyboard here, right? Or the keyboard. We haven't used this character yet, but ampersand, we've already used that. Most of the characters that we have here we're already able to utilize in some examples that we have already covered, right? So perhaps that's it for this session. Thank you, and I hope you got some information in relation to the different operators and what's the difference, and I hope we were able to cover the. If you have some suggestions and comments, highly recommended. Just leave a comment on the comment box for us to be able to improve this discussion session, right? Learn different operators, identify the difference between an operator and operand. Okay, that's it, everyone. Thank you.